Okay, today we are going to do some trig and inverse values, and you are going to need your calculator, so please make sure you get that out. And I'm going to title this trig. Oh, let me get a pen here. I like blue. Let's stay with blue. We're going to be doing trig values and inverse values. So I'll just call this trig inverse values. You need a calculator, and I don't have cool enough software yet to show you my 84 calculator, so I'm going to have down here a calculator from my computer. And your computer, I don't know if it has it on here. I'm sure it is if you go to Start, Programs, Accessories, something like that. But I want you to make sure your calculator is in degree mode, and the way you do that on your 84, or if you don't know, is you just click mode and make sure that it's on degree mode for now. So let's come over here and do some examples. Really simple. I want you to be able to find the cosine of 39 degrees. Now, on your calculator, you simply hit the cosine button and then 39 and hit enter. Make sure you're in degree mode. Mine's going to work a little differently. I have to hit 39 and I have to hit cosine. But you should get an answer of 0.7771. If it did not give you that answer, then you probably weren't in degree mode. Let's do another one. Let's do the sine of 212 degrees. So on your calculator, you just hit sine and 212 and hit enter. I have to do mine a little differently, and I want to talk about this for a second. You should have gotten negative 0.5299. Now, why is this answer negative? Negative 0.5299. Do you know why this was a negative sign instead of a positive? Where is 212 degrees? Whoa, that x-axis is really bent. 212 degrees sorry, is over here in quadrant 3. And in quadrant 3, from our reference angle, what's this opposite side? This opposite side is negative. And the adjacent side is also negative, and the hypotenuse, of course, is positive. And sine is opposite over hypotenuse. That's why that worked out to be negative. Okay, so now for some real calculator tricks. Let's find the cotangent of 56 degrees. Now look on your calculator real quick for the cotangent button. Some of you might think that it's the tangent -1 button, but that's not correct. That stands for tangent inverse, and we're going to do that in just a second. But you don't have a cotangent button on your calculator, and I don't either on this computer calculator. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to rewrite this as 1 divided by the tangent of 56 degrees. That's how we're going to do this on our calculator. 1 divided by the tangent of 56 degrees. So let's see if I can figure that out on my calculator. On my calculator, I'm going to probably need to do some creative stuff here. Because whenever I do 56 in tangent, it's going to give me that, and then I need to find my 1 over x button to be able to do this, which is right here. And you should get the answer 0.6745. 0.6745. Okay, so let's keep going here. Let's try the secant of 245 degrees. Alright, again, if you look on your calculator, you're not going to see a secant button. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to think about this as 1 divided by the cosine of 245 degrees, because if you remember, the reciprocal of secant is cosine. So you're going to do 1 divided by, then do cosine of 245 degrees on your calculator. I'm going to have to do mine a little bit differently from my computer screen. I'm going to have to find the cosine of 245. I wonder why that's negative again. And then 1 divided by that, and you should get negative 2.3662. Negative 2.3662. Why was this answer negative? I want to look at that again. Where is 245 degrees? 245 degrees is still in quadrant 3. And if we were to look at this reference angle, secant, which is the reciprocal of cosine, is hypotenuse over adjacent, and the adjacent side would have been negative. Of course, the hypotenuse is never negative. That's why we got a negative answer there. Alright, so that's just some button pressing on the calculator. So now let's go backwards, and I want to find angles if we know what the sine or cosine or what the ratio was. So let's just say, let's start simple. Let's say that we knew that the cosine of some angle was 1/2. And what I want to do is I want to go backwards and find the angle. Remember, the cosine is the ratio of adjacent over hypotenuse. Now, we did this with exact values. We probably could figure this out, but this is some button pushing is what I want you to get used to. What I want you to see here is theta is going to give us an angle. Or actually, when we do something, we'll get the angle theta. And what we want to do is cosine inverse. There's where we use that inverse button of 1/2. Alright. So if you just hit second, I think it's second cosine. I don't have that here in front of me. Let me just get this calculator out. Yes, if you hit second cosine and then 1/2, as long as you're in degree mode, you're going to get the angle that we're looking for. I'm going to have to do something a little different on my calculator here. I'm going to do 0.5, which is 1/2, which you'll have to do that as well, unless you do 1 divided by 2. And I'm going to do inverse cosine, and you should get 60 degrees. So when we go backwards, we are finding an angle. And the inverse cosine of 1/2 is 60 degrees. This tells us that the angle that we can find the cosine of, tells us that the angle that we can find the cosine of, I need to edit that, go back, hold on 1 second, let's get back out of there and out of there. Okay, so what this tells us is that the cosine of 60, bear with me for just a second here, because this tells us that the cosine, oh, there it goes, okay, alright, this tells us that the cosine of 60 degrees is equal to 1/2. Okay. A lot of technical problems there, but anyway. All right, so let's try one where some of us already knew this, but let's try if we knew that the cosine of some angle was 0.619, and we want to go back and find the angle with our calculator. So what we're going to do is we are going to do the arc cosine of 0.619. And so again, you'll just hit second cosine 0.619. I'm going to have to do this a little differently here. I'm going to do 0.619. I have to do inverse cosine, and you should get 51.756 degrees. Let's round that for now. Let's round that to, I guess, 3 decimal places. So we're going to call this, let me come back and look at that again, I didn't memorize it, 51.757 degrees. 51.757 degrees. Okay, so there we go. There's button pushing. Now let's get to some harder ones. Let's extend this page because we don't have some other buttons on here. And those other buttons are called secant inverse. And I want to talk about a few notations here. When we do like theta equals arc sine of x, This means an angle whose side, an angle whose sine is x. This means an angle whose sine is x. Now there's some other ways of saying this. We can say the sine of theta equals x. We could also say theta equals arc sine of x. This is another way of saying sine to the negative 1. Alright, so let's get to some of those other buttons that are hard to get to on the calculator. Let's do the example arc secant of 3.156. And you are not going to have an arc secant button on your calculator. So what we are going to need, let's rewrite this in this form right here. Okay, let's do a little algebra before we ask our calculator. I'm going to say that the secant of an angle is equal to 3.156. And from there, I'm going to rewrite this as 1 divided by the cosine of an angle is 3.156. And so here I'm going to basically flip both sides over, or you can cross multiply and solve for this, but we're going to say that the cosine of an angle theta is equal to 1 divided by 3.156. This way we are going to be able to turn this into an arc cosine or a cosine negative 1 button, which you have on your calculator. So we're going to rewrite this now as theta equals the arc cosine, which is cosine negative 1, of 1 over 3.156. Alright, so now let's get back to our little calculator here. So you're just going to press that button, second cosine of that, and I'm going to have to type in 1 divided by 3.156, and I'm going to do inverse cosine of that. Invalid input. I know what I have to do. 1, let me clear that. 1 divided by 3.156. I have to do equals here. I have to do some weird stuff. And then I can do inverse cosine. And the angle that we get is 71.527 degrees. Let's see if it's going to register that. Well, maybe not. 71 point, I think it was 527, is that what it was? 71.527, that's right. So the whole trick to this, or what I need you to know, is just how to press those buttons on the calculator. Tomorrow, we're going to be able to work some problems with this, but what I wanted you to learn before tomorrow is just how to rewrite it if we needed to do something like arc secant. So just so you know how to press the buttons on the calculator, and that's all you need to know for tomorrow's lesson.